Certainly. I mean, it's you hear them, you see them every day when you turn on a bulletin. Let me give you a current example, something which is causing a lot of concern here and also in America. This so-called crisis of mental health amongst young people. Now, I don't doubt that there are a lot of unhappy young people in the country. The question is, seeking the causes for that is one of the purposes of journalism. So if you look at journalism in the round, in a democracy, journalists should be the canaries in the cage. They should spot, analyse and investigate problems. So we have this problem of a lot of young people in Britain who are unhappy and mentally unwell, it is said. What is the cause for that? What is the reason behind that? I think it's closely linked to the breakdown in family life. I think that unstable families lead to unhappy children. If you look at the BBC's coverage of that story, it's all about the lack of resources for mental health clinics. It's about, they like to pin the blame on social media. I don't say social media is blameless, but I don't think it's the main cause. So, in my view, on that particular story, the real core issue is about family breakdown, family stability. Why doesn't the BBC investigate that story from that angle? I'll tell you why. Because we have lived through an age of hyper-liberalism. I mean, liberalism has many definitions, but I think its broadest definition would be that it is a philosophy which seeks human freedom in every aspect. And we have lived through an age, I'm in my 70s now, and in my lifetime, Britain has adopted a hyper-liberal attitude to society and individual behaviour. That has led to the situation where more than 1 million children in the country don't have a father. Rates of divorce and family breakdown are sky high. A lot of people don't bother getting married, and unmarried relationships, sadly, tend to be less stable and less long-lasting than married relationships. So those are in my view, that is the reason we have so many unhappy young people. Yeah. And the BBC never joins the dots. It prefers to portray that as the consequence of some other factors. The reason it doesn't do that, the reason it doesn't follow my line of thinking, is because to do so would challenge one of the precepts of liberalism. You know, the very liberal divorce laws we now have in Britain, where you can get divorced at the drop of a hat without giving any reason at all. That is something which, in my view, a healthy society would reverse. But there are things, that is one story which concerns me, and I've tried to explain why I think the BBC distorts that story. There are many, many others. I mean, this conflict that's going on in Israel at the moment and in Gaza, there's been a lot of comment about this, about the fact that the BBC initially wouldn't call Hamas a terrorist organization, and the idea that in some way that Israel is in some way responsible for this thing. That very much accords with the BBC's worldview. The BBC always takes the side of that party which can be portrayed as victims.
Right.
And so you'll see this repeated over and over again. This often puts the BBC in a position where it is on the side of, metaphorically speaking, groups which are very much opposed to a Western way of life, opposed to us. And if they had their way, they'd do away with us. So I think the crassest example in recent years of the BBC's bias was the Black Lives Matter episode, where the BBC took the knee enthusiastically and tried to, actually and successfully, propagandized the country from the perspective of Black Lives Matter, never bothering to investigate its antecedents and real motives. It's a Marxist organization.
It was on the website.
Yeah, and it's a Marxist organization which has subsequently proved to be deeply corrupt. And yet we were supposed to swallow whole this tale and to import into Britain, which I think is so wrong, a discourse about race relations which is pertinent in America, but not here. Race relations, luckily, actually are much better here than they are in most countries, at least in my experience. So that was another example where the BBC threw itself wholeheartedly into the promotion of this particular story. And once again, I think that just betrays the underlying ideology which drives the BBC.